We have another piece of electronic equipment from the early 70s to look at today, a Grundig Transistor 305 radio, made in Portugal, probably in 1970, but we'll see if there are any clues to the date once we get inside. I featured this Grundig Concert Boy radio on the channel back in 2020, link in the description, and I just love how well built and great sounding these Grundig radios are. The Transistor 305 is a fairly basic radio with AM and FM channels, an on and off switch and a tone button. You've got a volume knob and a tuning knob which is seized solid at the moment. That should be an easy fix, so I'll take a look at that in a bit. The radio feels pretty heavy, so I'm expecting to find batteries still inside, and it's a bit dirty, so it'll need a good clean too. The first thing to do is open up the battery hatch. Ew. But not so surprising. If I'm lucky, the seized tuner and the dead battery might be all that's wrong with this radio, so I'll go away and get the battery mess cleared up and then return to look at the tuner. Right, I'm back, with the worst of the battery detritus cleaned up, and I've opened up the case in the process so I could clean the circuit board. Now to look at the tuner. It's fairly normal for the old oil and grease on these things to go solid with age, the same as it does on mechanical calculators. And I usually free things up by applying some heat to loosen the oil, and then apply some fresh oil and give it a good jiggle until it's moving freely again. My preferred choice is a hot air gun like this one. These are sold for crafting and embossing, but they're also great for controlled heating of seized bearings and shrinking heat shrink tube. However, because there's plastic around the area on the radio, I won't be using the hot air method. Instead, I'll rest the blade of a soldering iron on the shaft of the tuner, which should soften the dried oil enough to get things moving again. So let's see if I can get an angle where I can see what I'm doing without blocking the camera. I'll carry a drop of oil to the drive shaft on the blade of a screwdriver, and then hold the soldering iron against the pinion to transfer some heat. And I'll try to move my hand out of the way so you can see a tiny bit. This may take some time, and I'll probably have to do the same to the pivots for the variable capacitor itself, so I'll cut out the boring bits. Okay, there's a lot of cast metal on the chassis of the tuner, and the heat from the soldering iron is just dissipating before the sticky grease melts, so I'll need to take the top section off, starting with the tuner window and decorative metalware. And of course the two rotary knobs need to come off too. Actually, it's quite mucky in here, so it's probably a good job of taking it apart, as I can now clean it. Now to slacken the screws that fasten the top section to the rest of the radio. I won't undo them all the way just yet, but that appears to be releasing the top, so I'll carry on. I'll pop the volume pot out so I don't need to unsolder the wires, and remove the screws the rest of the way. And now to gently ease the top off, keeping an eye on the tuning dial cord as I go. Yes, I nearly forgot. I need to release some wires that are clipped to the top, and also the ferrite rod needs to come off too. Okay, that's the top section off. I've used some garden wire to keep the tuning dial string in place, and I've carefully suspended the ferrite rod to protect those delicate wires. Now to apply some real heat to the drive shaft on the tuner. I'll keep heating and adding drops of oil and jiggling the drive shaft until I get some movement. And for a quick update, I've managed to get full movement, but only while the unit was hot. Once it cools down again it seizes up. So I've removed the C-clip from the pinion end of the drive shaft, and now I'll heat it up again and hopefully withdraw the shaft, and then I'll be able to get rid of that old grease once and for all. Right, that should be hot enough. Now where are my pliers? Okay, give it a jiggle. And out it comes. I'm using some paraffin to dissolve the old grease, then I'll do the same for the drive shaft. After that, all I need to do is apply some fresh grease and reassemble everything. Oh yeah, I've noted the positions of everything so I can reassemble and keep the tuning dial set exactly as it was. The large gear on the tuner is in two parts, which spring out of alignment when the pinion is removed, so you need to note that position before removing the pinion. OK, that's the top panel back on, so now for a quick test. I'll hook up a PP3 battery for now because I haven't got a PP9 kicking around at the moment. And power on. AM seems to be working, but it's a bit noisy with my studio lights turned on. If I quickly turn them off, you'll notice the interference goes away. And switch to FM. And that's working fine too. I'll do a bit more of a test in a bit, but first I'll clean the rest of the case and reassemble the radio. OK, that's the rest of the case cleaned, so the guts can simply be lowered in from the top, making sure the grounding spring on the right doesn't get bent backwards as it slides in. Then secure it in place with the two screws on the underside. There was some anti-rattle foam tape that had perished and I've removed that for now, but if I get rattles I'll put some back in. So now for a proper test. Like every YouTuber, I'm paranoid about getting a copyright strike, so I'll just pass through the channels until I get to something safe. But so far it's working fine on FM.
The new tradition is
Aha, something safe. Raising the tone button gives a bit more treble response. And for a quick test on AM.
well, nobody knew about him, and there was a famous Sun headline, wasn't there? Arson Who?
Which is also working fine, apart from the interference caused by my studio lights.
Which I tell virtually every day of the week to students.
OK, that will do for audio tests. I'll just show any remaining details and then we're done. The aerial is articulated and retractable, like so. On the left hand side there's a headphone socket and a power socket, although I'm not sure what sort of connector that needs. All the controls and tuning dial are located on the top panel, and that's really about it. If you've enjoyed watching, please like the video and maybe even subscribe to the channel, not forgetting to click on the bell icon so you get notifications when future videos are released. That's it for now, so thanks for watching and I'll see you in a future video.